Let us start the third session. Today, we will start from where we left yesterday. We were talking about the foundational elements, and we were at 1.2.4. This is the components of the guide. Although we already understand what are the components of this guide are, but generally speaking, projects comprise several key components that, when effectively managed, result in their successful completion. This guide of project management body of knowledge identifies and explains these components. The various components interrelate to one another during the management of a project, and these key components are shown in the table next, are fully explained in the sections in the table. Let us look at the table. Okay, these are the most important components of your PMBOK guide. Project life cycle. We will learn about them. We will talk about them in more detail. But generally speaking, you must understand what is a project life cycle. So project life cycle is a series of phases that a project passes through from its start to its completion. So basically, this defines the project life cycle. The phases, phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever the number of phases you have, those phases one by one accomplishes the project from start to completion, and this defines the project life cycle. Then is project phase. This is a collection of logically related project activities. For one phase or one stage, whatever work is to be done, naturally, every phase has its own product, own outcome. The deliverable of every phase is predefined. And to achieve that deliverable, we have this logically related project activities that culminate in the completion of one or more deliverable at that point in the end of the phase. Once a phase is completed, once a phase, all the work on the phase has been done, there comes the phase gate. Phase gate is a review at the end of a phase in which a decision is made to continue to the next phase, to continue with modification, or to end a program or project. So phase gate is a doorway from one phase to another. So once we have completed one phase, you have to kind of get an approval of this phase. This is a decision point. If the work of this phase has been approved, the decision to continue to the next phase can be taken, or it can be, you may be told to hold on, and next phase will be intimated later. A delay can be caused, or there may be some modification in planning of the further phases, and after that modification, then you can move on to the next phase, or maybe there is no need to go ahead to the next phase, and project or the program you are doing has been declared closed or terminated. So phase gate is a decision point at the end of a phase. Normally, when a project is to be terminated for any reasons, uh, we have to wait for the phase gate. We should not terminate the project right in the middle of a phase. This is a general courtesy that we should wait for the phase gate, let the phase which is in process to complete, and once it comes out at the gate, we at that point try and terminate that project or program. Then we have got project management processes. We have been talking about the project management processes. We said there are 49 such processes, and I will be explaining each one of them to you. This is a systematic series of activities directed towards causing an end result where one or more inputs will be acted upon to create one or more outputs. So each one of these processes will have some inputs, will give out some outputs, and to accomplish to transform from input to output, in between there are certain tools and techniques which can be used to do the work of that process. So there is a purpose for every process. There are certain inputs, there are certain outputs, and there are certain tools and techniques. In short, we call them ITTOs: input, tool, technique, and output. Then we have project management process groups. A project management process group is a logical grouping of project management input, tools, techniques, and outputs. The project management process groups include What are the process groups? Initiation is a process group, planning is a process group, execution is a process group, monitoring and controlling, and closing. There are 5 process groups of the project management. Uh, Project management process groups are not project phases. This is explicitly written in the PMBOK. Please stop calling these as project phases. I have been teaching for 20 years and people still are confused about it. Whenever I ask them what are the phases of your project, they say initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and control, and closing. This is absolutely wrong. These are not the phases of a project. Phases of project are something different and we'll talk about them. But these are the generic process groups. All the 49 processes are grouped into these 5 process groups and they overlap each other a lot. So process groups are different from the phases. We'll talk more about it. Then we have got the knowledge areas, project management knowledge areas. Uh, these are the areas of specialization like scope, time, cost, quality, an identified area of project management defined by its knowledge requirements and described in terms of its components. There are certain processes for each knowledge area. There are certain practices, inputs, outputs, tools, and techniques. So, all the 49 processes we just mentioned, they can be grouped into 10 knowledge areas. There are 10 knowledge areas: integration, scope, time, cost, quality, human resource, communication, procurement, risk, and stakeholder. So there are 10 knowledge areas, there are 5 process groups, and there are 49 processes. Then we have got project life cycle. Project life cycle has phases. Every phase, when it ends, there is a phase gate to pass through that. This is the approval gate for that previous phase, and the decision to continue is based on the phase gate. So these are the basic components of PMBOK guide. Okay, let us see project and development life cycles. There are 2 types of life cycles. One are the project life cycles and other are the development life cycles. So let us see what a project life cycle is. As we have just mentioned, process groups are not the life cycle. They are not the phases of the project, right? So it will be wrong to say that initiation phase, planning phase, execution phase, monitoring and control phase, closing phase. This is wrong to say because they are too generic in nature and they do not define anything at all except for some general general work. So these are related to project management, but life cycle is not related to project management. Life cycle is related to the project. And project is not all about project management. Project is the work of the project. Like if you are constructing a house, in how many phases will you like to construct the house? You see, it's not, you can't have standard life cycle initiation. Every project of this world will be initiated, even planned and executed, and this is stupid. It has to be very specific to the work you are doing. So if I am constructing a house, then think about in what major portions you can divide your work of the project. What major portions you can divide this work. So these major portions should occur in series, in sequence. One portion of work when completed, then only can you start the second phase, which is dependent on the first phase. So every phase comes one after the other. If you talk about initiation, planning, execution, when planning is happening, execution is happening. When execution is happening, planning is continued, and monitoring and control also starts happening. So this is very absurd that you start calling the project management process groups as the life cycle. They are not the life cycle. So right from the beginning of the project till the end, this is specific to your project. What is the customized work you need to do on that project, and how that work can be divided into some major categories or phases which could occur one after the other. It provides a basic framework for managing the project. The basic framework applies regardless of the specific project work involved. Phases may be sequential. Now, primarily, we want them to be sequential, but yes, of course, there could be some iteration, there could be overlapping. We'll talk about those things later, but for the time being, let us imagine that the phases are in sequence. Okay, I'll ask you, if you have to construct a house, what are the major portions of the construction of the house you would divide it into? What phases you would like to have? So please raise hand who want to contribute. Ji, Syed Mohsen. Ji Mohsen, how would you divide your project, construction project into phases? A house construction. Ji, please. Mohsen, we can't hear you. Please unmute your mic.
Is it okay now, sir?
Ji, bilkul.
Can you hear me now?
Of course.
Sir, as far as the house construction project is concerned, we can divide it into many phases. For example, from map construction to foundation, हम इसको phase 1 में divide कर सकते हैं. उसके बाद walls का और जो first floor की जो roof है उसको हम phase 2 कह सकते हैं, और इसी तरह से जो फर्स्ट फ्लोर है उसको हम फेज 3 कह सकते हैं. इसके बाद फेज 4 में हम जो फिनिशिंग से रिलेटेड, फॉर एग्जांपल प्लम्बिंग का काम है या इलेक्ट्रिशियन का काम है, इस तरह से उसको फेज 4 में डिवाइड किया जा सकता है. वो मतलब मेरी जो अंडरस्टैंडिंग बनती है इस तरह से.
That is a very good input. So let us see what Faisal have to say. Faisal Abbas. Ji, Faisal Abbas.
Sir, I will divide it to 3 phases. First one is the foundation phase. Second one is the grade structure, and the last one will be the finishing. These 3 phases, sir.
Right. Wonderful. Wonderful. Shahid Iqbal. Ji, Shahid Iqbal. Shahid, unmute your mic. We can't hear you.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So, sir, since my area is not construction, but I would rather take my area, which is information technology. So, I would split my project into, the quick wins and the quick goals, which I can achieve quickly in any of the digital project. So the similar project or the similar functionalities in any product, that would be my phase 1. And if it's a small project, it's a 3-month, 4-month project, I would rather go with only one phase. If it's a big project, big functionality, I would split into 3-4 phases, each group with similar functionality. That would be the distribution of my project.
Okay, wonderful. Let us listen to Hamid Shahi. जी Hamid, अनम्यूट कीजिएगा.
सर मेरी आवाज आ रही है?
जी बिल्कुल आ रही है.
जी जी. सर सबसे पहले हम डिमार्केशन कर लेंगे, उसके बाद हम डिजाइन और ड्राइंग्स की तरफ तवज्जो देंगे ताकि वो तैयार हो जाएं. उसके बाद हम सब स्ट्रक्चर जो प्लिंथ लेवल तक एरिया है उसको कर लेंगे. फोर्थ ये हो जाएगा कि हम सुपर स्ट्रक्चर की तरफ जाएंगे. उसके बाद जो फाइनल टच होगा वो उसकी जो स्टैटिकल लुक होगी उसके लिए जो जिसके अंदर पेंटिंग और तमाम चीजें, और फाइनल में हम एक पंच लिस्ट तैयार करेंगे जिसके अंदर जो भी रिमेनिंग और उसके अंदर मॉनिटरिंग में जो जो चीजें आए उसको हम कवर कर Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. बहुत आला. Anyone else who wants to contribute to the project phases? Okay. You see, all of you are right, um, but you see, we have to consider certain things. Number one, um, yes, one thing is very good that you all now understand that initiation, planning, execution is not the phase because I strictly forbade to call them phases. They are not phases. So you divided the project life cycle into 3, 4, or 5, whatever number of phases. So let me ask you, how many phases should a project have? How many phases should a project have? I am not commenting on the phases you said. Some of the phases you gave were good. Some were kind of sketchy. Probably last answer was more elaborate. Had 4, 5, 6 phases, and that was good. But my question is, how many phases should a project have? Please raise hands to answer. Any project, big project, small project, how many phases should it have? G. Faisal?
Sir, from my aspect, all the phases should be manageable, first of all, which
Mhm.
can easily manage, and not more than 4 to 5, sir.
Very good, very good. And Babar Shahzad?
जी सर, ये नंबर ऑफ फेजेस हो सकते हैं, डिपेंड्स ऑन द प्रोजेक्ट कि जितना बड़ा प्रोजेक्ट होगा उतने ज्यादा फेजेस में वो डिवाइड होगा. जैसे आपने अभी हाउस का बात की है, ठीक है, इसी तरीके से अगर एक बिल्डिंग की बात करते हैं या इस तरह, तो उसमें काफी चीजें इन्वॉल्व हो जाती हैं और हर एक्टिविटी बाज़ औक़ात दूसरे पे डिपेंडेंट होती है और बाज़ औक़ात होता है एक एक्टिविटी स्टार्ट होती है, उसके पैरेलल में दूसरी एक्टिविटी, दूसरा फेज स्टार्ट हो जाता है. तो ये इट कुड बी नंबर ऑफ फेजेस, डिपेंड्स ऑन द प्रोजेक्ट.
बाबर, दो बातें. नंबर एक बात तो ये है कि वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट द मेजर फेजेस ऑफ अ प्रोजेक्ट, एंड आपने कहा कि जितना बड़ा प्रोजेक्ट होगा उतनी ज्यादा फेजेस होंगी, बट हाउ मेनी कैन देयर बी? व्हाट इज द मैक्सिमम नंबर इन योर माइंड? कितनी हो सकती हैं फेजेस? जी बाबर. जी
हेलो
बाबर. जी बाबर.
जी, ये तकरीबन सर, ये जी 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 ये तकरीबन 5-6 ज्यादा नहीं हो.
5-6, that is my point. Whatever kind of project you are going, there has to be upper limit. You can't have 1000 phases, no matter how complex the project is. Even the NASA project has few phases. It doesn't have to million phases. So phases cannot be unlimited, no matter the project, how big or small the project is. Previously, somebody answered that um, I should not have any phases. Well, that is up to you. But no matter how small the project is, it could be divided into some phases. There has to be some stop gap points. I had a project of 3 months, and I divided it into 5 phases. It is very much possible. So naturally, you must that will define your quick successes, quick wins. Okay. So okay, Hamid, what you saying? Hamid Shahi. Hamid Shahi. जी हामिद शाही.
सर इसको इतने फेजेस में डिवाइड करना चाहिए कि उनकी मॉनिटरिंग और कंट्रोल हम कर सकें.
Exactly.
जितने नंबर्स कम होंगे उतना ज्यादा हम कंसंट्रेट कर सकेंगे. उसको एक्टिविटीज में भी आइडियली 3 तक हम जा सकते हैं, जो हमें आसानी से हम, और उसको इतनी कॉम्प्लिकेटेड ना बनाया जाए कि बाद में हम खुद ही उसको कवर ना कर सकें. सर
Agreed. I agree with your argument, but 3 is too small a number. 3 is okay with me, but 3 should not be set as a upper limit. You can have 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever. But generally, a rule is keep the things simple. Keep the things simple. Do not have unlimited number of phases. The phases should be so few, no matter how big or small the project is. Phases should be so few that they could be counted on fingers. And how many fingers do you have? You have 5 fingers in one hand. This is the best way of doing it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But even if you have more complex project, you may want to have more phases. let it be 6 or 7, but whatever. But do not go into double numbers. Do not go to 10 and above. Ji Amreen.
So I understand कि अगर प्रोजेक्ट कॉम्प्लेक्स हो तो उसमें फेजेस ज्यादा हो सकते हैं, सिंपल है तो उसमें फेजेस कम हो सकते हैं. बट आई डू नॉट अंडरस्टैंड कि उसका जो बार है लोअर लिमिट का, इज देयर एनी बार ऑन द लोअर लिमिट ऑफ द फेजेस?
No.
I wanted to ask that.
No. There is no bar. You can have a single phase, but that is not advisable because single phase means that everything is overlapping, right? All the activities are confusing. So why are we trying to divide a project into phases? That we have short successes. If I have 5 phases, I have 5 points to gather my wits and see what I have done and how I have done, and I can move ahead then. So 5 stop points are there, or 4 or 3 or 2, whatever number of stop points you want to have. That will give you quick successes. You will have some achievement at the end of each phase, and that will encourage you to move ahead, and you can also show a progress to someone. Ji Amri.
I wanted to ask, should we take phase as a milestone?
Okay. I will discuss milestone later, but phase is not a milestone, but end of phase, what we call phase gate. Phase gate is a point which accomplishes the phase, which vets the phase, which approves the phase. So phase gate could be declared as a milestone. I'll describe milestones sometime later.
Okay. Thank you.
Most welcome. Okay, so we agree that we must have not many phases. One phase can be possible, but not advisable. More than one phases. 2 phases, again, this is not really very interesting. At least 3 phases. And 5 is a very ideal figure. You must have 5 is very good figure. And you can have more, 6, 7, but the higher the number, lesser is my vote with it. You keep raising it to 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, I'm not really very comfortable with 8, 9. 6, 7, 8, 9. Maybe I'm not very comfortable with it. So the ideal number from my point of view would be 5 is very good. Very good. But I am not restricting you. You can range from anything from 3 to 9 or whatever you want to say. Okay. What if your project is very complex and these phases, the 4 or 5 phases you have created, they are not enough to describe the internal working of the project? What should I do? Anyone who can answer that? If these even 7, 8, 9 phases are not enough and I want to have more phases, how can I accommodate them? Any ideas? Hamid. Ji Hamid bhai.
सर इसको हम WBS बनाते हैं, वर्क ब्रेकडाउन स्ट्रक्चर, उसके अंदर हम सब बना WBS, तो हमारा ये होगा कि हम लोगों को जो उसके अंदर हम कंफर्टेबल होंगे और फिर हमें पता होगा कि हमने क्या करना है. सर
Right. Actually, you are right in saying that we will create a WBS, but I would rather say, yes, you are right. We can relate it to that. But if there is a need for a phase to be further explained, we can have sub-phases defined under certain phases. If there is a phase which needs further explanation, maybe phase 1 has further 3 phases. So we call them sub-phase 1, sub-phase 2, sub-phase 3. So if every phase can be divided into sub-phases, we can accommodate a huge number of phases. And the maximum number of the levels of phases could be not more than 3. Do not go beyond 3, because after 3 levels, it will start getting confusing. And 3 levels, I mean, the top level is your project, second level is your phase, third level is your sub-phase. Beyond that, if you want to make sub-phase, then this is going to be complicate the whole issue. This is equivalent to having so many phases. Why I am advocating phase and sub-phase? Because the person managing the whole project needs to remember only the main phases. The person responsible for that phase will then be responsible for those remembering those sub phases and managing and planning for those sub phases. Therefore, this is doable. If as a project manager, I know I have got 5 phases and the first phase is this, second is this, third is this, and you should be very clear about it that each phase is surgically separate from the other phase. Some of you have said that there can be an overlap in the phases. I agree with that, but I disagree that 2 phases can start together. Impossible. 2 phases can never ever start together. Yes, this is very much possible that one phase is yet not finished and you are allowed to start another phase. A little bit of overlap is possible, but calling it 2 phases starting together, that is criminal. That is criminal. So 2 phases cannot start together. So this is clear that we have got a number of phases. And now coming back to the question of your phases of construction of a house. I think the last answer by probably Hamid was quite elaborate. We have to be more surgical. First of all, let us look at the work I am going to do. I have to construct a house. If you look at closely, you will find that there are so many activities, so many works, which had to be completed even before the construction can be started. Maybe you have to, buy the land, you have to take no objection certificate from CDA, you have to apply for utility companies and all that, gas and electricity and all that, that takes a lot of time. So all these actions should have been taken before you construct the house. And this all depends upon you. You want to keep these activities here or you want to do some of these activities later. I am not objecting to that. But I am just dividing, I'm just earmarking all those activities which should be complete before the ground can be broken. These could be the pre-groundbreaking activities. Do you agree with me? So this pre-groundbreaking activities phase, we should give it a name. What name you would like to give it? Preparatory phase or approval phase or Ji Hamid?
Acquisition, sir.
Ji?
Land acquisition, sir.
Let us make it more general because we are not only acquiring the land, we are doing many other things. So let's say acquisition and planning or acquisition, let's call it acquisition and planning. Is it okay?
Okay, sir.
Saeed Mohsin.
Sir, we can call it pre-construction phase as well.
Very good, very good. I fully go with it. Very, very good name. So pre-construction phase, very nice. So this is, and you must earmark what all are the activities you intend doing in this pre-construction phase. That would include many things which I have mentioned, and you could come up with some other activities also. So let us make it one phase and decide on all the deliverables you should have by the end of this phase. As if this phase could be declared closed, you should have approved drawing, architectural map, permission NOC, and this and that and whatever. So all of those deliverables should be complete as if I can declare this phase complete. So what could be the next phase? Ji Mohammed Shahid.
Yes, sir. Regarding the same discussion, your same question, now we have moved ahead towards the construction side. But your original question was that what if you cannot complete a project in, let's say, 5 phases or 7 phases, still the project is very complex and your project is not over. Then we move to the other discussion. Then one friend of ours is, he suggested to have the WBS. Then we carried away with the, so I want to listen to the actual answer, what would be the ideal case in that scenario. But, as far as WBS is concerned, you can create a WBS, but at certain time, why you have split your project into multiple phases? Because at that point in time, you don't have that information. You don't have the activity breakdown.
Exactly.
You don't have the activities that what activity you are planning in maybe the fourth phase. You are in phase 1.
Exactly.
What you will be doing in phase 5, you don't know.
Wonderful.
So you cannot plan a WBS. So what would be the answer? Yeah.
Right. Well, actually, I did not agree with the WBS, but I did not object to it because ultimately this will be depicted in the overall WBS. That's why I did not object it. But WBS is not the answer. The answer is to have sub phases to the phases. You create every phase which needs further description. You create sub phases under it, and that would be maybe the phase 1 could be divided into 3 further sub phases: sub phase 1, sub phase 2, sub phase 3, and you name them. So whomsoever is made responsible for that phase 1.
I got it. Yeah. Yes, sir. Similar approach. We divide our phase into multiple code drops, so we can have maybe 5, 6 code drops in phase 1. Similar concept. I got it.
Exactly. So we are not really talking about a WBS, but ultimately when we will be creating the WBS, all these phases will be apparently visible there.
Sure.
Okay. So coming over to the next phase, let us say naturally you are constructing a house, a conventional house has foundation, and foundation is a huge work because you have to dig it down, and you have to dig the foundations, you have to pour the foundation, and you have to put all the infrastructure in place. So there is a lot of effort in after groundbreaking has occurred. But let us stop all the work after it reaches the ground level. So let us call it the foundation or underground phase. So this underground phase will take care of uh, all the construction under the ground. It may be the basements, it may be the foundations, it may be whatever you want to do. So all that will come under that phase. Ji Hamid. Ji Hamid. Hamid, you wanted to say something?
सर गलती से हाथ लग गया सर.
अच्छा कोई बात नहीं, no problem. Yeah, I'm really happy that you people are active, especially those who are raising hands and who are participating. That makes all the fun going. That is really very, very nice, and I'm really thankful to you for that. Anyways, ji, so maybe I'm just suggesting. I'm not figuring out that this is exactly going to be like that. But like we had the first phase, which is before the groundbreaking, and the second phase, which is all the work at the till the ground level, and then maybe somebody mentioned the gray structure could be there. Gray structure means all the walls and roofs and everything. This could be your gray structure, and then comes the finishing work, which is kind of uh, uh, all the electricity and wiring and plumbing and painting and distempering and all that, all finishing installations and everything. This could be your fourth stage, and ultimately, let us keep a separate phase for handing it over. That is a very important thing when you are actually handing over this house and taking over and transferring the ownership or whatever you want to do. So those activities are also very laborious. You see, um, till the gray structure, it can take very less time. Maybe in 2 to 3 months you can have the gray structure ready. But once it comes to the fourth phase, that is the finishing, that takes another 3 to 6 months. And then taking over will also take another 1 month or so. I'm just talking about a simple house, right? So we just took an example of a construction of a simple house, and we could easily divide it into surgically 5 phases, and every phase is independent of the other phase. Once one phase is complete, only then the second phase can start. Once that is complete, only then the third phase can start. This is the ideal way of doing it. The phases should deliver their outputs, should deliver their deliverables, products, and once they all have been achieved and it has been vetted, only then you are allowed to move on to the next phase. This is the role of the phase gate. The phase gate between phase 1 and phase 2 is the is where you get the permission to move ahead. You can be stopped to working any further. You can be your work can be rejected, and you could be told to go back and correct whatever you have done, or you may be allowed to move ahead and move on to the next phase. So this is how the phases should classically behave. But unfortunately, things do not happen as we wish. Sometimes, when a phase has been completed, or there is one activity, the approval of phase 1, or maybe the audit of phase 1 is to be conducted, and audit activity is the responsibility of someone else, and that is taking too much time. That is being delayed, due to which our project is being delayed. Although we should not be starting the next phase until and unless phase 1 is cleared, but because it is causing unnecessary delay, so management decides that you should start phase 2. So if I start phase 2, then I am taking, although I'm saving time, but I am taking a bit of risk. The time I'm overlapping with phase 1, the finish of phase 1 is not yet there. So I'm overlapping with phase 1 for some time. This time is dangerous, because what if the people who come for the audit disapprove of anything and tell us to, maybe, I have constructed the gray structure, and they tell me, and I'm asked to start the finishing phase, and in the finishing phase I have started laying the lines and plumbing and everything, and somebody comes up and he says that previous phase has not been approved, and therefore you go back to previous phase. So whatever work you have done in the finishing phase will all go waste. You may have to redo it after the corrections have been made in the previous phase. Therefore, until and unless a phase is closed, you should not be starting work on the phase 2. But in some cases, we sometimes have to start working on the next phase while the previous phase is yet not complete. So you must have enough assurances to move ahead like that, if that be the case. So this much overlap is okay with me. But I'm not going to agree with anyone who is saying that phase 2 and 3 are starting together. How can two phases can start together? If you are really interested in doing two separate paths simultaneously, two separate paths of work simultaneously, why don't you call it sub-projects? Make your project into sub-projects and keep doing two different activities, two different paths of work in different phases. Like, there is Centaurus in Islamabad. This has 3 towers. So when it was being constructed, I used to look at it, and I would say this is a good project. This is a huge project, but this project has got 3 distinct sub projects. Each tower is a sub project, and all of these 3 towers could have been constructed simultaneously under the command of a separate project manager, whereas an overall big project manager is looking after the whole Centaurus thing. So every tower could have its own life cycle. This life cycle could be separate from the other towers, or it could be predefined that all the towers will have the same life cycle. So if you intend doing 2 paths of work in the same project, why can't you call it sub projects, and then define the life cycle of each sub project? Are you okay with that? Ji, please raise hands who understand my point. So that means only 4 people understand and nobody else is right. Okay, I will take it that you all understand my point. So thank you very much. Let's move on. Okay. So the next point, only after this, what I have discussed, I would say the phases may be sequential. This is we already know. maybe iterative, and maybe overlapping. Now, iterative is a very dangerous thing. What does that mean? How could a phase be iterative? No, in some kind of projects where, especially in the software industry, when we are using a spiral model, heard about spiral model? I hope you have. In spiral model, when you are not really certain about the ultimate output of the project, you create a small little model according to the requirements, and you show that mock-up to the client, that is it what it should look like. Maybe you are ordering me to construct a car for you. So I will create a small little model of the car with all the specifications you have given me, and I'll show you this car as if you can view it and tell me if it is what you want. If that is okay, then I will go into the next iteration and I will develop it a stage up. जी बिल्कुल हाफिज जी बोलिए, हाफिज मोहम्मद आसिम, आपने कहा ड्राफ्ट, जी बताइए।
सर इसका मतलब यही है, आप ये कह रहे हैं कि फॉर एग्जांपल कोई मॉडल आप शुरू में जैसे कोई ड्राफ्ट देंगे, तो अगर उसकी अप्रूवल आती है देन यू विल कंटिन्यू।
एग्जैक्टली, पहले छोटी सी चीज, फिर उससे बड़ी चीज, फिर उससे बड़ी, स्टेज बाय स्टेज हम खुलते चले जाएंगे और बड़ी से बड़ी चीज अल्टीमेटली फुल स्केल मॉडल, फुल स्केल आपका जो प्रोडक्ट है वो बन जाएगा।
ठीक है सर, थैंक यू सर।
So this is the case for iterative, right? So as such, iterative does not mean that you keep revolving around in the same cycle and it never ends. But iterative is again a kind of a life cycle. And moreover, when we talk about agile, then iteration comes into action. Agile is very, iterative model, and in this we do not know the requirement, and we are focusing only a small part of the requirement at a time. So this is one iteration I am doing. Once I am done it, I have delivered this. Then I'll take another small little iteration, then another small little iteration. So this is also kind of a model in which we have got multiple iterations going one after the other. But interestingly, I would rather say that these iterations are basically the phases of the project, a very small phases of the project. But this defies the rule of phasing, because we said number of phases should be very few. But in iterations, you could have 200 iterations for the whole project. So this is a new way of thinking in which we do not exactly know what the output and ultimate output of the project will be, but whatever the requirements are there, we are just focusing on small little portion of 1 to 2 weeks work, and whatever we can do, we can deliver, and then we do the next part, and next part. So here the concept of phases has completely changed. In Agile, the concept of phasing has completely changed. All projects can be mapped to a generic life cycle. Now I am going to show you the generic life cycle, but remember, this is a generic life cycle. This is very misguiding, very misleading. Do not go by the names given to the phases in this generic life cycle. This is just like, for some life cycle which could apply to any project in the world, which is very wrong. Any life cycle, any generic life cycle cannot apply to any project in the world. Therefore, this is just an example, and this is to be studied with caution. So, for example, it says, just for example, your project has got 4 phases, a very, very generic phases. The starting work of the project, so you could name it something. Then the organization and preparing phase, you could name it something. Then the main task, main carrying out of the work, it looks like execution and initiation and planning and that, but it is not. But you're carrying out your work and ultimately, the conclusive part of it. So whatever names you want to give, you give your names. Do not ever refer to these names. These names are not standard names at all. They have given these names just to indicate that initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, control, and close are not the phases, and those terminologies are not used here. But again, this is a generic kinds of names. So these generic kinds of names will be replaced by the actual names of whatever project you are doing. Every phase has got a phase gate. The diamond shape icon shown here between two phases is a phase gate. You see here, the key phase, this is a phase gate. And one box, the light blue box, is one phase. This is another phase. This is another phase. And you see, all the phases are not equal in size. So, all the phases may have different durations. It is not the duration which is dictating what the phase does, but the work of the phase is dictating what all has to be done in this phase. Now, this theory completely changes when we are going to iterative model, when we go to Agile. In Agile, all the iterations are actually the phases, and there are 200 phases, and every iteration is of exactly equal size. If the iteration size has been fixed to 2 weeks, then every iteration will be 2 weeks, and there will be maybe 200 iterations going on. So this defies our waterfall model. This is not a waterfall model. So the thing which we are looking at right now, this is the waterfall model. And in waterfall model, generally we have the scope amply clear. When scope is not clear, then only is highly doubtful, then only we will go for the agile kind of a thing, a iterative life cycle. Then doing the project according to this life cycle, whatever the life cycle you have created, 4 or 5 phases, and whatever are the phase gates. You see, the last phase gate is the ending of the project, and that is not only concludes the last phase but also concludes the whole project. So while we are doing all this, all our project in these phases, we will be using the knowledge of project management. So as far as the processes, the project management processes are concerned, the 49 processes, there would be certain processes from which will be used for initiation purposes, certain processes will be used in planning, certain processes in execution, monitoring and control, and closing, and those will be applied to each one of the phase separately. Because every phase is like a small little project, and every phase has to be initiated, every phase has to be planned, every phase has to be executed, monitoring and controlled, and closed. And once it is completed, we enter into the next phase, and again all the 5 process groups are applied here. That is one of the reasons why we said that process groups are not phases. So within a phase, there could be application of all of these 5 process groups. Then these 5 process groups are not surgically separate from each other. You know, they are simultaneous in nature. While the planning is happening, execution might be happening. When the execution is happening, monitoring and control is also happening, and some things are being closed and some things are being initiated. And you see, in the life cycle of this project, initiation is happening for every phase. So initiation is here, 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 here. At the start of every phase, there is initiation. At the end of every phase, there is closing. So you see, it is again being repetitive in nature. So all the 5 process groups will be applied to the project life cycle, as well as all the 10 knowledge areas. The expertise knowledge about each one of these knowledge areas will also apply to your project. Now it all depends upon yourself, how you tailor the project management process groups, processes, and the knowledge area as per the need of your project, because this is your project you are running. The PMI is nobody to dictate anything to you. Nothing given in PMI, PMBOK is mandatory for you. You could pick and choose the good practices which apply to your knowledge, to your project, and you and your team and your stakeholders will jointly decide which processes you want to apply. But the basic theory and concept must be very clear to you. So this is what it is. And in between, there is a blue line going through the life cycle that shows your timeline. That shows your timeline. So timeline is, at this point you must have achieved this much. At this point you have achieved this much. So timeline is related with the milestones. So these phase gates are milestones, and if you can remove everything from this picture and just look at the timeline and the phase gates, that shows the exact picture how the timeline looks like. Timeline is from the start till end. There is a straight line. From the start of the project till the end, you draw a straight line and then place your milestones on it. That is called a timeline. Timeline is not a schedule. So do not confuse it with schedule. Timeline is a straight line on which the milestones are shown. I will describe the milestones later. Okay. So we talked about the project life cycle. So project life cycle can be predictive or adaptive. What is predictive? It can be predicted with pretty much confidence. Meaning what? The scope of the project is amply clear, although there will be changes to the scope, but it is amply clear. So predictive is that kind of thing, and in that case, we use the waterfall model or the traditional project life cycle. Then there are adaptive life cycles. Adaptive life cycle is completely different. Here the scope is not clear, is constantly changing, and it is we cannot establish a scope at all. So what we do is we start doing from somewhere. We start our work in small portions and we keep adapting to the change as we move ahead in the life of the project. This is the adaptive. I'm sorry, Ji, we missed the connection for some time. I think some people have dropped out. Are you all listening to me now? Please raise hands. Okay. So once again, I'm sorry for the delay, for the breakup, but we will try to move on. Anything you want to say till that point? Ji Mohsin.
Sir, we have been discussing the Agile technology, waterfall model, and spiral model.
जी जी.
मोस्टली ये जो वाटरफॉल स्पाइरल और प्रोटोटाइप मॉडलिंग है ये सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से यूज होती है.
जी जी सही है.
आई एम लिटिल बिट कंफ्यूज्ड दैट अभी तक जो मैं अंडरस्टैंड कर पाया हूँ
जी
कि जो एजाइल टेक्नोलॉजी में डेवलपमेंट और टेस्टिंग जो है वो कंकरेंट है.
हाँ जी.
ठीक है. और जो स्पाइरल मॉडल है हमारा दैट इज द कॉम्बिनेशन ऑफ वाटरफॉल एंड प्रोटोटाइप मॉडलिंग.
जी जी.
तो सर my question is this ke number one ke how we can differentiate between agile and waterfall modeling. The second thing is कि आपने जिस तरह बताया या ये जिस तरह का सिनेरियो है जिसमें आपकी डिजाइन या डेवलपमेंट और टेस्टिंग जो है वो कंकरेंट चल रही है. ठीक है. उसमें फिर फेज गेट के हवाले से क्या होगा सिनेरियो?
इसमें फेज गेट जो है वो आपका आइटरेशन ही आपका फेज गेट बन जाती है. आइटरेशन को आप डिस्टर्ब नहीं कर सकते. अगर आपकी 15 दिन की आइटरेशन है तो 15 दिन की आइटरेशन में आप कोई डिस्टर्बेंस नहीं कर सकते. उसके बाद आप डिसाइड करेंगे कि आगे चलना है कि नहीं चलना है.
ठीक हो गया. ठीक हो गया. और सर एजाइल और वाटरफॉल मॉडल में क्या डिफरेंस होगा?
अच्छा, पहली बात तो ये आई मस्ट क्लैरिफाई दिस बिकॉज एजाइल इज थॉट टू बी यूज्ड ओनली इन आईटी इंडस्ट्री और सॉफ्टवेयर इंडस्ट्री, बट very recently Agile is being adopted by all other industries. That is exactly why PMI has introduced Agile vigorously in all of its 6th edition. In every knowledge area, it is talking about Agile. There is special section created for Agile, and that shows that future of project management, no matter it is IT or construction or whatever, this will all Agile will be everywhere. So IT industry or software development basically is a pioneer of introducing Agile, but Agile is ultimately going to be adopted by everyone. Right now, what we see is that in the sector of telecommunication, Agile has been adopted. People have started using it now. I am myself providing trainings to PTCL and Ufone and so many other companies, and so many other companies have already done it. So they are moving on to Agile. And I have conducted some research in 2015 onwards on application of lean and agile methodologies in construction project management. Although this is so far, people will not agree with me because this is the matter of maintenance of the status quo. People don't want to change, but there is very much a possibility. And I have quoted in my research that since 1960, there are certain practices in construction engineering which were similar to agile. And this is very much a possibility that hardcore disciplines like construction, mechanical, and all that can be converted into agile ultimately. So this is how where the word is heading. But the project life cycles could have been on a continuum of predictive to adaptive. So these are not just two types of life cycles I'm talking about. I'm talking about all types of life cycles, from one extreme of predictive to the other extreme of adaptive. There could be many life cycles. So we are basically differentiating between the two extremes here. So within a project life cycle, there are generally one or more phases, as we have already discussed, that are associated with the development of the product, service, or result. Now, within each phase, how will you develop your output will be defined by the development life cycle. So within the phase, whatever you do is your development life cycle. So this satisfies the need of the iterative also, adaptive life cycle also. In Agile, you will have a development life cycle within your small little iteration. So development life cycle can itself be predictive, it can be iterative, it can be incremental, it can be adaptive, or it could be a hybrid of anything. So we are not really very certain about exactly what format it will take, but you can tailor it according to your requirement. Whatever discipline you are in, you're in IT, then you will have a look at it in a different manner. If a construction engineer will look at it in a different manner, a construction engineer would probably see more applicability of predictive and incremental, whereas a software engineer might see all possibilities in his development life cycle. So there could be any number of possibilities available. Okay, the predictive, we are talking about the extremes. In a predictive life cycle, the project scope, time, and cost are determined in the early phases of the life cycle. Now, what about the scope, time, and cost? These are three things. These are the three project objectives. People usually used to call it triple constraint, but I disagree with it because since long, more than 10, 12 years back, PMI has explicitly removed the words triple constraint from the dictionary. There is no triple constraint. Triple constraint, because constraints are not three, constraints are more than three. There could be other constraints like, quality is a constraint, risk is a constraint, and resource is a constraint. So a lot many things can be constraints. So this is not the matter of triple constraint. This is a matter of project objectives. So scope, time, and cost, though they are constraints also, one of the many constraints also, but scope, time, and cost are basically defining the project objectives. If somebody tells me that he needs me to construct a house, that does not give me a scope, that does not give me a time, and does not give me a cost, does not define the project at all. The scope of the project, the time of the project, the cost of the project, I should have some idea of these things. So if you tell me that I need a 3-bedroom house, I have a fairly good idea of a scope. If you tell me you have 1 year to construct it, I have a fairly good idea of time. if you tell me this much money is available for you, then all these three things, if available, only then the project can be properly predictive. And so in a predictive life cycle, the project scope, time and cost are determined in the early phases of the life cycle. So we know it already. In the beginning, we have a fairly good idea of the scope, time and cost of the project, and therefore we design it accordingly. Things may or may not go according to the plan, and if there is some change, we will keep bringing those changes in progressive elaboration. G. Sharyar.
Hi sir, can you able to hear me?
Yeah, of course.
Hello?
जी मैं सुन रहा हूँ.
Yeah, sir. I just wanted to say, since my background is from the telecommunication industry, and what I've seen, and I totally agree with you, the telecommunication industry is going from, from the waterfall approach towards the more agile approach in the project management. So I just wanted to say, like, just to give you one example of 5G. So 5G, sir, it's totally an adaptive approach because, it's a new technology, or it's we say that like it's a disruptive technology where the business plans and the new business opportunities are not very clear, so it cannot be predictive. It will be changed throughout the life cycle. तो इसमें टेलीकम्युनिकेशन में सर जो मैं बताना चाह रहा हूँ मैं कि आजकल जो है ज्यादातर एडॉप्टिव अप्रोच ही चल रही है, और टू सम एक्सटेंट इवन प्रिडिक्टिव लाइफ साइकिल में भी एक लेवल ऐसा आता है कि वो चेंज हो जाता है, जो कि मैंने देखा है एडॉप्टिव पे. आई मीन एक स्टेज ऐसी आती है प्रोजेक्ट लाइफ साइकिल पे कि आपको चीजें क्लियर नहीं होती, तो आप प्रिडिक्टिव से एडॉप्टिव पे भी मूव कर देते हैं.
बिल्कुल,
हालांकि आपने स्टार्ट प्रिडिक्टिव से किया होता है. I just wanted to say this. Yeah.
So this is a very good input, and you see, this is how the people are going to be thinking in future. In all industries, in all areas, people will start thinking adaptively. So predictive things will not be predictive. Times are changing. Things are moving very fast nowadays. So we have a problem with predictive life cycle. Although I'm not saying that predictive life cycle will not perish, but at the same time, the other life cycles will start taking precedence. So it's a very good input. Any changes to the scope are carefully managed in a predictive life cycle, and predictive life cycle may also be referred to as the waterfall life cycle, which we normally refer to. Waterfall means just like a waterfall, जैसे आबशार होती है. So water always flows from up to down. So once it has passed a stage, it cannot climb back up. So this is what the waterfall model is. So whatever you have to do, you plan first and then you do it and you keep doing it. So you keep traveling downwards. So basically this waterfall model was designed for IT initially. So you see, Agile is also designed for IT and now being adopted everywhere. Predictive lifecycle was, the waterfall model was also designed initially for IT and it is used everywhere. And its waterfall model has gone through many cycles. So the first change was, I don't have diagrams to show you, but waterfall was one process, second process, third process, and there is an arrow connecting from 1 to second and going down. So you do this, you do things in sequence and you complete your job. And there is no way of going back. So to make it possible to go back, there was another model which was supplemented to the waterfall, and that was to go back one step to correct the errors. Then there was another model which was called the V process model, that was based on the testing mechanisms, that you can go back to any level at a level of testing. So if you are testing unit testing, you can go only one level back. But if you are doing the integrative testing, you can go all the way back. So various testings are done in software, and V process model allows you to move from anywhere to a previous status. So this is the predictive life cycle, which is now called as the waterfall life cycle in all walks of life. Then we have the iterative life cycle. Now, iterative is general name. it could be further explained into many life cycles. Iterative could be spiral. It could be like in pharmaceutical industry. What they do is when the research, when they do not know uh, what to research for, and they just know that they have to find, uh, they have to develop a medicine for AIDS, and they don't know how to go about it. So what they do is they say, okay, we don't, this is not, we can't predict anything. We don't know how we'll go about it. So the very first thing is let's carry out a study. So the first phase is they develop a first phase to carry out a study. So they carry out this study, and based on the result of this study, this is phase one. We will then decide what should be our phase two. So then nothing is apparent. So no matter how long this will take, maybe it takes 6 months for completing this study, but based on the result of this, then it is decided what should be the next phase. Maybe the next phase is carry out the research in the field. So a team of doctors go to the field, and they start experimenting on various herbs and things, and this could be the next phase. And based on the result of that, there could be another. So this is also a type of iterative life cycle. And if you talk about agile is also an iterative life cycle. But in agile, the things are quite different, because here the iteration is not very long. It is not, all iterations are not of different size. Here we have decided beforehand the iteration size, and it is going to be consistent for every iteration. And here we are not targeting the product in that iteration. We are targeting only the time. There is a time capsules we have created, and whatever job we can get accomplished in this time capsule would be delivered. So iterative even can have many shapes and forms. The project scope is generally determined early in the project life cycle, but time and cost estimates are routinely modified as the project team's understanding of the product increases. Iterations develop the product through a series of repeated cycles, while increments successively add to the functionality of the product. So this iterative life cycle fits into all the three definitions: the spiral definition, agile definition, and the pharmaceutical definition. These all are various kinds of iterative life cycles. But again, every iterative life cycle is a different life cycle. Then there is an incremental life cycle. This is more, incremental life cycle is more like what I said, this pharmaceutical example was, you are developing the iterations in increments. So you do one increment, and based on the result of that increment, you develop the next increment. So in an incremental life cycle, the deliverable is produced through a series of iterations that successively add functionality within a predetermined time frame. The deliverable contains the necessary and sufficient capability to be considered complete only after the final iteration. Adaptive life cycle are agile, iterative, or incremental. They're one and the same thing. They're names for the same thing. Adaptive, agile, iterative, instrumental, they all look alike, but they function differently when we go into the mechanism of that specific life cycle. The detailed scope is defined and approved before the start of an iteration. So the scope of every iteration is defined, and then you launch into that iteration. Adaptive life cycle are also referred to as agile or change driven life cycles. But please do not be confused. If you are already you know about agile, specifically Scrum or anything, you may find these definitions to be kind of not really very sure kind of definitions. But this is sufficient to show you the way how the different types of life cycles could be. Then there could be a hybrid life cycle. This could be a combination of anything. A predictive and adaptive life cycle could be joined together to customize your own needs. Those elements of the project that are well known or having fixed requirements follow a predictive development life cycle, and those elements that are still evolving follow an adaptive development life cycle. So again, there is a possibility of tailoring your solution accordingly. So it is up to the project management team to determine the best life cycle for each project. The project lifecycle needs to be flexible enough to deal with a variety of factors included in the project. Lifecycle flexibility may be accomplished by these three things. Number one, identifying the process or processes needed to be performed in each phase. So what is to be supposed to be done in each phase? Performing the process or processes identified in appropriate phase. First you identified it, then you performed it, and then you applied the corrections, adjusting the various attributes of a phase, name, duration, exit criteria, and all that. So this has to be adjusted, and you can have a flexible life cycle. Project life cycles are independent of the product life cycle. Now, this is another discussion we may get into. Project life cycle and product life cycle, which may be produced by a project. Now, you can look at it from two different dimensions. Product life cycle is a series of phases that represent the evolution of the product from concept through delivery, growth, maturity, and retirement. So if you look at it closely, forget about the project life cycle. If you look at it closely, the product life cycle is a much larger life cycle than the project life cycle. You may say that product life cycle starts when the project finishes, but that is not true. The conception of that product was done much before the project ever took birth. The product was conceived much earlier, even before the business analyst did the business need and business case was created. Even before that, the product was conceived for someone. So right from the conception till the retirement of that product, this is a huge life cycle which could extend decades. For example, just take the example of Toyota Corolla. This Toyota Corolla product is yet not retired, and it keeps coming up with new versions, new models every year. It has been decades that the Toyota Corolla is in market. So the product life cycle is going on. But every year they come up with a new version of the same product, same model. A different model every year. So the product life cycle of Toyota Corolla was conceived by someone about 30-40 years back, and now it is still continuing, and we don't know when it is going to retire. So during this product life cycle, there could have been many project life cycles. First, the idea of this product was conceived, and then feasibility could have been done. That could be a project. The feasibility itself could be a project. Then there could be some other actions taken. Then for the first time, this Toyota Corolla was created. First model of that Toyota Corolla was created. That was also a project. Then the next version with few improvements, another project. Every year they are doing another project and coming up with a new product, a new model of the same product. So the product life cycle is continuing. And when they will discontinue making Toyota Corollas, and the service to the Toyota Corolla parts will no more be available, and it will be diminished from the market, that is the time the product life cycle will complete. And during this product life cycle, you see, you have gone through multiple project life cycles. Okay, ji. Are you okay with that? Let us have a look at the Appendix X3, which deals with Agile, Iterative, Adaptive, and Hybrid project environments. So that appendix is to be read in continuation with this chapter, and it will give you even more idea, a fair idea about it. So this shows a continuum of predictive and adaptive. On one extreme is shown the predictive, on the other is shown the adaptive. Adaptive is iterative, is also adaptive, incremental is also adaptive, agile is also. So on a continuum, predictive is the requirements are defined upfront before development begins. In the middle, requirements can be elaborated at periodic interval during delivery. And in agile, pure agile, requirements are elaborated frequently during delivery. You see, things are not really very clear. Things are half clear. Things are very much clear. So this is a continuum. In predictive, it delivers plans for the eventual deliverable, then deliver only a single final product at the end of the project timeline. So the output of predictive is coming once and at the end of the project. Whereas in the middle, we show delivery can be divided into subsets of the overall product. Maybe, we have various phases. Every phase is delivering something to the customer, and the delivery is not only coming once at the end, but continuous delivery is coming after every phase. And in pure agile, delivery occurs frequently with customer valued subsets of the overall product. Now, this is very interesting that in agile, we are consistently delivering after every iteration. If iteration is 2 weeks, every 2 weeks we are delivering something. Continuously we are delivering throughout the life of the project. It will keep delivering until the project ends. So something is continuously, your stakeholder is involved, your customer is involved, customer is being satisfied, and customer is also happy that in the subsequent work, he could change anything. He is not being stopped from changing any requirements in the future work. So whatever has been done, he has accepted, and whatever will be done can be changed by the customer at any time. So high order of flexibility is there. And the interesting part is we deliver value in agile. Highest value is delivered first. So we initially, whatever are the total requirements of the project, we sort them down into a prioritized order of product backlog, and in such a way that the highest value tasks are on the top of the list, and those highest value tasks are done in the very first iteration. Therefore, the maximum value is generated in the first iteration. So as we move ahead in the life of the project, we keep delivering continuously, and most of the value we have already delivered so far. You understand my point? If I am delivering the maximum value in the first 2 weeks and then a little less in the next 2 weeks and little less in the next 2 weeks, so we are consistently delivering, and maybe at a stage we have delivered 80% value and only 20% value is left, and customer is happy, and customer is also happy that he is able to change everything. In predictive, change is constrained as much as possible. We resist change in a predictive setup. In a middle setup, iterative and incremental, change is incorporated at periodic intervals after every phase. But in agile, change is incorporated in real time during delivery, continuously. Our phase, our iteration is so small, it is just 2 weeks or 3 weeks, so we are able to bring changes after every 2 or 3 weeks. In predictive, key stakeholders are involved at specific milestones. Only their involvement is limited. Whereas in iterative and incremental, key stakeholders are regularly involved after the end of every phase. And in agile, they are continuously involved. They are interacting with the project team throughout the life of the project. So this is a better buy-in. In predictive, risk and cost are controlled by detailed planning of most knowable considerations. So everything is planned upfront, and risks and costs and everything is calculated upfront. Whereas in iterative and incremental, they are done on progressive elaboration basis, like on the basis of phases. In agile, risk and cost is only handled for each iteration. We do not calculate anything for the next future iteration. We only work in a small little iteration, and the work is simpler, and we are better prepared for that. So risk and cost are controlled as requirements and constraints emerge. So as and when they emerge, we control them. So we plan for only small little iterations, and we effectively yield the results. Now, in the next diagram, it shows you the level of iteration. If we are working in sequential iterations, one iteration after the another, it could be applied to agile or iterative or whatever you want to call it. But once I have done one iteration, this 2-week job had some objective. I have achieved that objective, initiated it, planned it, executed it, monitored and controlled and closed it. And whatever I delivered after that, I got into the next effort for iteration. So next iteration, next iteration, next iteration. I will sequentially keep doing all the iterations, and uh, the effort for each iteration is continuously increasing, and in the middle it goes to the top and then it again comes down, while in the meanwhile the second iteration has started. Agile, iterative, and adaptive and hybrid project environment relationship could be like this. Initial processes, initiating processes are there, planning processes are there, executing and monitoring processes are there, and the turning arrows in between are showing the uh, iteration. So you initiate an iteration, you plan, you execute, you monitor and control. You don't close anything. You move on to the next phase, and that's how this continues till end. Project phases. A project phase is a collection of logically related project activities that culminate in the completion of one or more deliverables. Talking about more about deliverable, more about a waterfall model. The phases in a life cycle can be described by a variety of attributes. Attributes may be measurable and unique to a specific phase. So whenever we are nominating a phase, the phase should be anything we do must be measurable and unique. The attributes of a phase could be the name of the phase. You either can call them phase A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3, or you can give them proper names like we gave them. Then the number of phases, as we discussed, 3 phases is good, 5 phases is also good. Keep the number of phases to the minimum. Duration of the phase, if it is to be ascertained in Agile or something, then probably you have to fix the duration. Otherwise, duration is not fixed in a waterfall model. Resource requirements, what kind of resources are required for this phase, this could be defined. Entrance requirement, how this phase will be initiated, and exit requirement, how this phase will be declared complete. So entrance requirement for a project to move into that phase, for example, what are the specified approvals documented, specified documents completed to start this phase. And exit is the documents approval required to conclude this phase, completed documents and all those deliverables which have to be delivered at the end of it. These are the various attributes of the project phase. Projects may be separated into distinct phases or subcomponents. These phases or subcomponents are generally given names that indicate the type of work done in that phase. So these are some of the names. For example, you can name them like concept development phase, feasibility study phase, customer requirement, or whatever you want to call them. But these are the few examples of the names for your phases. Project phases may be established based on various factors, including but not limited to management needs. You see, the first thing I told you was that it is the project which has to be created, which has the life cycle of the project which has to be defined. So it must concern with the technical work of the project. You should not be concerning yourself with the project management process groups, because they are not phases. But anyways, in your organization, what are the management needs? In some organizations, management decides what life cycle will be adopted in our organization. So they have preconceived life cycles, and all the projects run in that organization would be run in those phases. Maybe your organization have defined 5 phases, and all projects run through those 5 phases. Well, this happens usually when your product is similar. For example, a software development company, which is only dealing with the software development part of it, and they're not developing web pages or anything else, though their life cycle would be very similar. For all projects, their life cycle can be very similar. But look at it from another angle. There is another software development company which has a section on software development, a section on web development, and a section on mobile development. All of these three may have different life cycles, again defined by the management. Then it also depends upon the name of the phases and number of the phases, depend upon the nature of the project as well. A construction project can have a different kind of phases. A IT project can have a different kinds of phases. So that also relates to the core knowledge of that area. Unique characteristics of the organization, industry, or technology can also govern that. Project elements, including but not limited to the technology, engineering, business, process, or legal, and even the decision points, like when the funding is coming. Sometimes the phases could be made according to the funding. The funding is coming from maybe WHO, and WHO funding release 1, phase 1, release 2, phase 2, something like that. So our project go, no go decision or milestone reviews, these all things, all decision points may define the phases. Using multiple phases may provide better insight to managing the project. It also provides an opportunity to assess the project performance and take necessary corrective and preventive actions in subsequent phases. Key component used with project phases is the phase review. So phase review, where it is done, this is the phase gate where we conduct the phase review. Phase gate is held at the end of the phase, and that is the milestone. The project performance and progress are compared to the project and business documents, like the project business case, project charter, project management plan, benefits management plan. These things you have not studied, but I will be talking about them. Very briefly, I have been mentioning about the business case. How does a project come into being? A business analyst is sitting down there in the organization, and he is watching all the opportunities and problems in the organization. So he would actually see the business need. He will feel the business need. And if there is a business need, then he will create a business case. That business case, if approved, this business case is basically a feasibility for that business need. And if it is approved, then that means the project will happen. So when the project is initiated, the charter is to be developed. The charter is the legal official permission to start the project, and that is normally given by the project sponsor to the project manager. But project manager can also contribute towards the charter, but naturally he is not the author of it. Once the project manager takes on the project, his job is to develop a project management plan. Project management plan deals with the work of the project, how and when and where it will be done. But once the project delivers its deliverable, the project management plan's work is done. But behind the project management plan, uh, there is another bigger plan, which is called the benefits management plan. And that is not created by the project manager, that is created by the business analyst. So it is created beside the business case. Benefit management plan is the product of this project, how will it be used, sustained in long run, and how it will yield the benefits, how the benefits and when these benefits are to be realized. This is the benefit management plan. So benefit management plan is a bigger plan, and it is created outside of the project management. But this benefit management plan and the business case are very useful in developing the project, because they are the seed data to the project. This is what we have, the big picture, how, why is this project being done, what is the business case, what are the benefits going to come, how the benefits are going to be achieved. So these things once clear to me, only then I can move on with my project management planning. So on a phase gate, a decision, go or no go decision, is made as a result of the comparison of continue to the next phase. So either we want to continue, if we are allowed to continue to the next phase, that is a go decision. If we are not allowed, this is a no go decision. So if it is a conditional thing, yes, you can go to the next phase with certain modifications. Your phase is not fully approved. You have to make certain modifications in your current work, and if that is done, you are allowed to move ahead. You don't have to come back for the permission. You can move ahead with the next phase. Or if it is a project is supposed to be terminated immediately due to certain reasons, then after this phase is done, the project is ended or terminated. But it may be possible that this was the last phase and ultimately the project had to end here. But if it is not the last phase, then the termination could be the reason for the project ending. it may ask you to remain in the phase and don't go ahead. Repeat the phase or elements of it, correct something. So these are all the various decisions which can be taken by the phase gate. Depending on the organization, industry, or type of work, phase gates may be referred to by other terms such as, you have many names for phase gates. Some people call them phase review. Some call them stage gate, because phase and stage are normally used interchangeably. Some people use the word phase, some people use the word stage. So it could be a stage gate, it could be a phase review, it could be a kill point. Why do you call a phase gate as a kill point? Because at this point, at this phase gate, the project can be killed. Project can only be killed, terminated at phase gate, not in between. So we can also call it a kill point. We can also call it a phase entrance, because this is the entrance point for the next phase, or it could be a phase exit point from one phase. So whatever name you like to use, you can use according to your industry and organization. Organizations may use these reviews to examine other pertinent items which are beyond the scope of this guide, such as product related documents and models. These are not, to be discussed in the project management. They are related to the product. Then are the project management processes. Our project lifecycle is managed by executing a series of project management activities known as the project management processes. And these are, I'm referring to the 49 processes which we talked about. So those 49 processes will keep happening. Every project management process produces one or more outputs from one or more inputs by using some appropriate tools and techniques. So every process, out of the 49 processes, every process has a number of inputs, has a number of outputs, and a number of tools and techniques. So all the 49 processes must be understood. I am not asking you to learn anything by heart. Don't do rata. Don't memorize things. Just go for the conceptual understanding of each and every phase, each and every process, and that will give you enough knowledge to understand why this input is coming here, why this output is going out, and why these tools and techniques are being used here. So output can be a deliverable or an outcome. Outcome are an end result of a process, and project management process apply globally across industries. Project management processes are logically linked by the outputs they produce. So one process is giving something as an output, which is getting as an input to another process. So this linkage is established, and those linkages will be, described later. Processes may contain overlapping activities that occur throughout the project. So that is very much normal. Output of one process generally results in either an input to the another process or a deliverable of a project or phase. So output of a process could be, becoming the input of another phase, or if it is the last process, it probably would be the deliverable. So this diagram shows how each process will be defined. This is an example process. So we have got inputs on one side, we have got tools and techniques in between, and we have got outputs, and then PMBOK defines each one of these items in detail. And we will be discussing all of them. So this is very laborious, this is very lengthy, but at the same time, if you develop understanding of the thing, then probably this will become much easier for you. The number of process iterations and interactions between processes varies based on the needs of the project. But I will give you a overall flow of the processes, how the things interact with each other, how the processes interact with each other. Processes generally fall into one of the three categories. Processes used once are at predefined point in the project. There are certain processes which are not to be repeated. There are certain processes that are performed periodically, and there are processes that are performed continuously throughout the project. So you have to differentiate between these kind of processes. You would know and you would learn which process is continuous in nature, which is one-time process, and which is periodical. Processes used once at a predefined point in the project. These are the processes like develop project charter. Charter is developed only once. Or close of the project. This happens only once. Processes that are performed periodically. That could be, you acquire resources periodically. During execution, you keep acquiring resources when required. The process of conduct procurement is performed prior to needing the procured item. So before you need an item available, you may conduct the procurement. So this is also a continuous periodical process. So whenever required, you will be doing it. Then there are continuously continuous processes, and they would include defined activities. Activities may be defined throughout the project lifecycle. Risks could be defined throughout the project lifecycle. So there are certain things which will keep happening throughout. At the end of the project, these things will be continuously repeated. Project management is accomplished through the appropriate application and integration of logically grouped project management processes. While there are different ways of grouping processes, PMBOK guides groups processes in 5 categories called process groups. This we have already talked about. Initiating process group, planning process group, executing process group, monitoring and controlling process group, and closing process group. So once again, process groups are independent of project phases. They have nothing to do with the project phases, but every project phase will have all the 5 process groups. So these are the 5 process groups: initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, control, and closing. Okay. Process flow diagrams are used throughout the guide. So every process will, not only the table I have just shown you, the input, tools and techniques and outputs, but there will be some process flows also shown to you for each process. All of the 49 processes have a process flow chart, which should be referred to. Project management processes are linked by specific inputs and outputs, where the results and outcome of one process may become input to another process that is not necessarily in the same process group. Note that process groups are not the same as project phases. Time and again, it is repeating that thing. Now, let me explain something about the 5 process groups, what happens in these process groups. Before I can do that, if there are any questions, you can raise hands. Ji Janab. No question? Okay, let me take a little time in describing this. We have these 5 process groups. What do we do in initiation of process group? Please, whatever I am going to be talking about now is not exactly the processes I am talking about. I am just talking about the process group. In the initiating process group, what all happens? Now, what all happens is not categorically the processes. They may refer to the processes, but these are not the processes. I'll describe the processes later, but generally, when you are initiating a project, number one thing you need to do is you, as a project manager, or if you are a project sponsor, as a project sponsor, you have to check the alignment of your project with the organizational objectives and the customer needs. That is the most important thing. Whatever responsibility you have, whatever level you are at, when you are assigned this project as a project sponsor or as a project manager, you must check why are we doing this project? What is the necessity of this project? Is this project being done for some good for the organization? Is it aligned with some of the organizational objectives? And does there any customer need exist for this project? I know you do not want to question these things, but this is an eye opener, because so many projects, they do not have customer in mind, or they do not have organizational objective or benefit in mind. They are just created on the whims of the senior officers. The person who is sitting on top, he just dreams of something, and tomorrow he will be initiating a project according to his dream, and that would not be benefiting the organization, and there will be no customer base for that. A stupid project will be done. So, although the feasibilities are expected to have been done already, the business case has already been existing, still you are the person, you have been assigned this project to be done. You have the right to comment on it, whether this should be done or it should not be done. So, it is your responsibility to check the alignment of your project with the organizational objectives and customer needs. For that, you must understand the organizational strategy. What is your organizational strategy? What are the strategic objectives? What is the vision, mission, and goals and objectives of your organization? This a project manager must know. You do not live in a capsule. You do not live in the capsule of a project. You have to be a part of the organization. You have to establish the linkage with the organization as if you can do your project better. So this is very important that you align yourself, your project with the organization objectives and customer needs. Then you have to develop a preliminary understanding of the scope of the project. That includes the stakeholder needs and expectations should also be, I'm not saying in detail, but general understanding what this project is supposed to be doing and who are the stakeholders and what are the stakeholder needs and expectations. Then you must also understand what are the major big risks in this project, big assumptions, high level assumptions. They must also, and constraints also, you must understand. Then you need to understand you need to identify all the stakeholders as if you can collect needs and expectations from them. Although I'm not asking you at this stage in initiation to collect the needs and expectations, but at least identify the stakeholders and analyze them, how important they are to the project. Later on, once you're planning, you will have to interact with these stakeholders. So at the stage of initiating, you will interact with the stakeholders, you will identify the stakeholders. And project charter has to be developed. The most important thing, which is the mission of this initiating process, is to give the order of this project to the project manager and define to him what to be done. And basically the preliminary scope statement is defined in the project charter. Then comes the planning. Planning, naturally we have got 10 knowledge areas. And if we have to plan the project in detail, each one of these 10 knowledge areas have to be planned in detail. And only then the project management plan can be established. So to start with the beginning, we have to have the scope agreed. We have to have the schedule established. We have to have the cost budget approved and project team identified, communication activities agreed, quality management process established, risk response plans approved. So everything, all the 10 knowledge areas have to be planned in detail and consolidated into a project management plan. The ultimate result of planning is a project management plan. We will talk more about it, but this is all about planning. Everything has to be planned in detail. Then whatever you have planned, now in execution, you have to perform according to that. So execution itself is a dumb process. It does not have, is not allowed to think by itself. It doesn't think by itself. It doesn't have a mind of its own. But whatever has been planned, execution will follow that plan. So it is just like, in operations, we have SOPs. So in projects, we have project management plan to follow. So when you execute the project according to the project management plan, the scope will be achieved, stakeholder expectations will be managed, human resource will be managed, quality managed against the plan, material resources managed, and so on and so forth. So the things will happen actually in execution according to the plan. And in monitoring and control, we will see what has happened according to the plan and what has not happened according to the plan. So project is tracked and status communicated to the stakeholders. Project changes are managed, change control is is handled. Quality is monitored and controlled. Risk is monitored and controlled. Project team is managed. Contract is administered. And it's not all the 10 knowledge areas have to be monitored and controlled, integrated, plans changed, and ultimately sent back to execution for execution. Ultimately, once everything is done, we move on to the closing, and the purpose of closing is to uh, accept the outcome of the project. Project resources, when they have done their job, they must be released. Stakeholder perception should be measured and analyzed and put into the lessons learned, and project should be formally declared closed. So this is a brief summary of all these 5 process groups. What do we do in these process groups? Now, in addition to these process groups, processes are also categorized. Each one of these processes, 49 processes, can also be grouped into the knowledge areas, and we have got 10 knowledge areas. Knowledge area is an identified area of project management defined by its knowledge requirement and described in terms of its component processes, practice, input, output, tools, and techniques. So they are the same input, output, tools, and techniques, but here we are grouping the processes into their respective knowledge areas. Although the knowledge areas are interrelated, they are defined separately from the project management perspective. So there are 10 knowledge areas identified in this guide and used in most projects most of the time. These are the 10 knowledge areas: integration management, scope, time, which is called schedule, cost, quality, resource. The human resources is included in the resource, communication management, risk management, procurement management, and the stakeholder management. So all of these 10 knowledge areas are headed by the integration. The first chapter, chapter number 4, because first 3 chapters are introductory. The 4th chapter is the first knowledge area, and 4th, 5th, 6th, and there are 10 knowledges after that, 4 to 13. So number of these knowledge areas are according to the chapter numbers. So the first knowledge area is integration, and integration is the parent of them all, because all the knowledge areas have to be integrated into the project management plan, which is the integration plan. Integration plan is called project management plan, and all of other knowledge areas subordinate to the integration, to the project management plan. And all these other plans contribute towards the development of the project management plan. So therefore, integration is always supreme in all the process groups. So all these knowledge areas will have to be planned in detail. I have numbered them according to the sequence of the number of the knowledge area, as well as according to the chapter number. So integration is responsible for identifying, defining, combining, unifying, and coordinating the various processes of project management activities. So everything which is done in project management from all the other nine knowledge areas is integrated into the project management plan. Scope talks about the work required, and only the work required to complete the project, meaning what? In scope and out scope is properly defined and requirements are established. In schedule, we are focused at timely completion of the project. So this will deal with all those processes dealing with the schedule. Cost includes the planning, estimating, budgeting, financing, funding, managing, and controlling of the cost, so the project can be completed within the approved budget. Quality, naturally, we are concerned about the quality assurance and quality control. So organizations' quality policy regarding planning, managing, and controlling the project and product quality requirements in order to meet stakeholder expectations. Resource management includes the process to identify, acquire, and manage the resources needed for the successful completion of the project. Communication includes the processes required to ensure timely and appropriate planning, collection, creation, distribution, storage, retrieval, management, control, monitoring, and ultimate disposal of project information. Risk, naturally, identification, analysis, risk response, risk implementation, and monitoring of the risk. Procurement, we decide what we will do ourselves and what we have to outsource. So it includes the process necessary to purchase or acquire product, service, or result needed from outside the project team. So this is the contracts. Stakeholder, the last knowledge area. This includes um, the identification of the people, group, or organizations that could impact or be impacted by the project, to analyze stakeholder expectations and their impact on the project, and to develop appropriate management strategies for effectively engaging stakeholders in project decisions and execution. So again, coming back to the same circle, all the 10 knowledge areas. So this is what it is. Next, what I want to go ahead with is to show you how they interact with each other. The needs of a specific project may require one or more additional knowledge areas. How is it possible? Like in construction, they have got a financial management knowledge area and a safety and health knowledge area. So in addition to these 10 knowledge areas, in construction, you remember I told you about the construction extension to PMB, okay? So that talks about 2 additional knowledge areas in construction: financial management and safety and health management. So, different industries could have different needs, but the standard knowledge areas are 10. Um, Table 1.4, okay, right. Let me show you this also. These are the 10 knowledge areas, and against each knowledge area, I have shown how many processes out of 49, how many processes relate to integration. 7 processes relate to integration, 6 processes to scope, 6 to schedule, 4 to cost, 3 to quality, and so on and so forth. And if you sum it all up, this comes out to be 49 processes. If you look at it from the knowledge area point of view, in the bottom you can see, this is again the knowledge area, right? Where are the process groups then? Here is the process group. These are the process groups. 5 process group: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, control, and close. Same 49 processes. There are 2 processes in initiation, 24 processes in planning, 10 processes in execution, 12 processes in monitoring and control, and 1 process in closing. Again, comes out to be 49. So if I take you to a big chart, this is the big chart in which in the columns I have shown you the process groups: initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, control, and close. And in the columns we have, in the rows we have the 10 knowledge areas, chapter number 4 to chapter number 13, all the 10, starting with integration, scope, time, cost, etc. So if you look at the rows, these are the knowledge areas, and integration has got total of 7 processes, scope has 6, and so on and so forth. And if you look at columns, you can see that initiation has got 2 processes, planning has got 24 processes, and so on, and ultimately again totaling up to 49 processes. So there are 49 processes which are divided into 5 process groups and also into 10 knowledge areas. We will analyze this chart tomorrow in detail, and we will see how these various processes interact together. So, are there any questions? I see most of you have dropped off. Any questions, please? You can raise hands if there is any question. Okay, if there are no questions, we can call it a day. Thank you very much for your company and for listening so passionately to me. I have been speaking a lot, and maybe I have bored you at some places, but this is what it is, and we are going to be more interesting, inshallah, next time. Take care and Khuda Hafiz.